The topic that we are discussing today is invasive species and how these are affecting our world. So, invasive alien species are species that are non-native to a certain ecosystem. They provide a lot of threats to the habitats and other species that are within that ecosystem. They are a main driver of human global change to environment. They are the second greatest reason for species endangerment and extinction. They provide a great threat to human goods, health, and services, and they also have a huge economic impact on our society as they have cost us a lot of money.
Regulating services is the aspect of ecosystem services that accounts for natural phenomena. Examples include climate regulation, water purification, soil stabilization, and disease regulation. Invasive alien species can have costly effects on all of these components. The first example is non-native pasture grasses. These species of grasses have overtaken sections of the Amazon rainforest, resulting in a loss of carbon sequestration. This net loss results in climate warming and increased threat of fire. Another example of invasive alien species on regulating services is the golden apple snail. This snail has transformed the wetlands of Southeast Asia into algae-infested waters. While this transformation has had a drastic impact on water quality, the snail also eats the rice seedlings in this region. This results in deficits in rice production costing $425 to $120 million annually. Equally as troubling is the brush-tailed possum and the dangers this species poses. The brush-tailed possum has the ability to transmit bovine tuberculosis to cattle and deer. The effects this may pose in terms of livestock revenue is troubling on its own, but the cost to control the species has put companies out millions. I've already discussed the cost of the paperbark tea trees in terms of provisioning services, but its regulating services cost may be even worse. In Florida alone, the species was projected to cost $250 million in fire damages by increasing fuel loads in 2010. On top of this staggering cost, removing the aquatic plants in this region costs $10 million annually. Provisioning services can be defined as the material and energy output from ecosystem services. When an invasive alien species affects these services, the result is typically a loss in material goods or revenue from these goods. For example, the yellow star thistle is an invasive species that affects rangeland in California. Cows cannot eat this species, costing $7.65 million annually in lost livestock forage. In addition, ranchers pay $9.45 million annually in an attempt to control this species. The combination of these costs is the equivalent of 7% of the total revenue of California rangelands. Another example of the cost of invasive alien species on provisioning services is the paperbark tea tree. This species increases profit from honey revenue, but more importantly threatens Everglade forests of Florida. If the trees were to overtake the Everglade forest, $1.68 million of ecotourism dollars would be lost annually. However, this species' impact on the honey industry is $15 million annually. No matter the fate of the invasive alien species, there is significant loss at hand. The final example of costs of invasive alien species on provisioning services is the salt cedar, which is an invasive alien tree that is prevalent along streams. This species consumes much more water than the native species, 1.4 to 3 billion cubic meters to be exact. This results in a $26 to $67 million worth of water that could be used for drinking, irrigation, hydropower lost. This is a prime example of lost material revenue. The final component of ecosystem services to explore is cultural services, which include spiritual enrichment, recreation, and aesthetic experience. An example of the cost of invasive alien species on this service is the effects of Eurasian water milfoil. Water-based recreation in Lake Tahoe results in $30 to $45 million annually. However, if this service may become compromised because of the erosion this species causes. The cost to remove this species is substantial. If a 1% loss in recreation revenue as a result of this species were to occur, $500,000 would need to be spent annually in control and repairs. Another example is the red imported fire ant, which has a costly effect on cultural services. Across the southern United States, this species has racked up billions in costs to treat stings, electrical damages, and crop losses. It is projected that if this species were to travel to Hawaii, there would be a $134 million deficit after taking tourism loss and agricultural impact into account. Invasive alien species can also impact audioscape, an aesthetic factor of cultural services. The coqui frog, which has made a new home for itself in Hawaii, can emit a sound of 80 to 90 decibels at 0.5 meters. The species in Hawaii is twice as dense as its native population in Puerto Rico. This makes the sound unbearable and has resulted in significant declines in property values close to this population.
Benefits of invasive species can be broken down into 3 different subcategories: provisional, regulating, and cultural. Provisional includes providing drinkable water, food, textiles, and medicine. Examples of this could be the invasive plant species such as acacia and pinus, which were introduced into Africa. They're good for making houses, such as like their roofs. The thatch is good for that, as well as medicinal purposes. Regulating services include pollinators, decomposition, water purification, erosion, flood control, as well as climate regulation. So this would include the honeybees that were deliberately introduced into North America. They help pollinate the farmers' plants, which saves them millions of dollars each year, as well as the positive impact on honey productions that an invasive tree species has had in Florida. Cultural services are the ones that influence our beliefs and traditions, as well as the tourist side of services, which would include the aesthetics. So in New Zealand, a possum was introduced as an invasive species. However, it ended up producing $20 million each year because it was beneficial to the fur trade. Other cultural services are harder to identify, however, because they're more based on people's beliefs instead of a general example for the whole world.
The woody plant is a plant that can be found in South Africa, although it's not native to the area. This plant has a fair share of benefits and disadvantages. Some of the benefits include ample amount of wood for fire and for the building of shelters for the communities nearby. But its disadvantages are far greater. This plant needs far more amounts of water than species native to the area. In fact, it uses about 30% of the water supply, therefore reducing the amount of water the surrounding communities have access to. In the illustration, you could see how over the years these trees have taken over the land in South Africa, therefore causing the need for programs such as Working for Water, who remove the woody plants to try to help the surrounding communities regain access to more water. Feral pigs can be found wandering about Hawaii. This is a good thing for hunters who rely on the pigs for meat. These pigs are also a form of religious and cultural value and are used in a variety of different ceremonies. Although they may be beneficial in those aspects, they also have plenty of disadvantages. They destroy crops while eating them, and also knock down trees and carve them out, damaging forests and causing erosion. They also create a breeding habitat for mosquitoes, who are known to carry disease like malaria. These pigs, no matter how small, have caused a large impact on the ecosystems of Hawaii. Zebra mussels impacted the Great Lakes in many different ways. Some of the more positive things they did were improve water clarity and provide a source of food for some fish, crayfish, and adult mussels. On the other hand, they caused a great deal of serious disadvantages. One of the most crucial was that they would clog water intake pipes, which interfered with the flow of water out of the lakes and caused millions of dollars in repairs. They also completely took over beaches, boats, and docks, and would cut people's feet if they were to accidentally step on one. This species provided a lesson learned to how one species could completely mess up an ecosystem.
An example of a control measure of invasive species is using economic incentives and disincentives like taxes, fines, and grants. Communities haven't been making IAS their main concern, so groups have pressured governments to enforce this control measure for effective results. This can result in better compliance for those introducing IAS. This control measure has worked great in controlling IAS in a lot of places, one in particular being South Africa. In South Africa, Working for Water is a government-funded program that involves removing woody plant IAS to restore hydrological and many other services with income for poor people in South Africa. Some ideas for other control measures include more effective inspection systems at international borders. This is important in finding and removing these pathways of introduction, investing in education on IAS and their diverse impacts. This can lead to better enforcement and more support from the people in these communities. Using the ecosystem service framework to prevent and control IAS. This is good because it could reach a more diverse audience and therefore giving them a say in the outcome of IAS.
Another way to control invasive species is by using the fire and flood prevention. And so this actually ended up saving the US millions of dollars, and by removing the aquatic plant IAS from lakes and waterways, it saved the US $10 million. So a lot of these prevention tactics that they are taking are actually saving the US and other countries a lot of money, which in the end will be very beneficial to our economy. So just to wrap things up, these are two examples of invasive alien species that are found in Lexington, Kentucky. On the left is the bush honeysuckle, and on the right is the Chinese silverlings. And so invasive species are a major contributor to global warming, ocean temperatures rising, and climate change. These are very important and have an impact on our future, the world we live in, and our economy, and it is a very important idea that needs to be focused on, and everyone needs to be aware of what is going on with this. And in the future, we will continue to regulate invasive species to hopefully prevent extinction and endangerment of other species that are currently living in certain ecosystems.